this is Ashley Gaska. Today we're going to talk about Petrarch's Sonnet 3. Our goals for today are to understand Petrarch's sonnet, to be able to identify the extended metaphor in Petrarch's sonnet, and to be able to explain what Petrarch is trying to say through his metaphor. So, first of all, an extended metaphor. Well, a metaphor is a comparison between two things without the use of additional words such as like or as. An extended metaphor is when a writer carries the same metaphor throughout the entire poem, elaborating on it to create an overall meaning. Here's an example of a metaphor. Juliet is my son. This is not a metaphor. Juliet is like the sun. That is a simile. So, which ones of these are metaphors? That boy is as excited as a golden retriever. Is that a metaphor? My love is an ocean that rushes to the shore but runs away when the moon makes her appearance. What about that one? The flowers twirled on the wind with their skirts of petals, dancing to a music we humans cannot hear. And Shelley is as pretty as a picture. Which ones do you think are metaphors? Were you right? This one, that boy is as excited as a golden retriever, compares a boy to a golden retriever, but it uses the linking word as. Then this one, my love is an ocean that rushes to the shore but runs away when the moon makes her appearance. There's no like, there's no as, it's just a comparison. The flowers twirled on the wind with their skirts of petals, dancing to a music we humans cannot hear. This is comparing flowers to dancers like ballerinas because it talks about the skirts of petals. Shelley is as pretty as a picture. This is also not a metaphor, it's a simile because it uses the words as to compare Shelley with a picture. Now, these two are both metaphors, but this one is more explicitly a metaphor because it says, my love is an ocean. It directly compares the two things, there's no guesswork behind it. This one is more of an implicit metaphor, meaning it's implying the connection between flowers and dancers. It's not saying flowers are dancers. It's giving you the image of a dancer through things that you know are related to dancers, like the skirts, the twirling, the music. And so you still have the metaphor, but it's implicit instead of explicit. Explicit is when it directly says what the metaphor is. Implicit is when it implies it. So, we're going to read Petrarch's Sonnet 3. For the first step, we're going to read through the entire poem without stopping so that you could form your initial ideas about what you think the poem is saying or any areas you found confusing. It was the morning of that blessed day, whereon the sun in pity veiled his glare for the Lord's agony, that, unaware, I fell a captive, lady, to the sway of your swift eyes, that seemed no time to stay the strokes of love. I stepped into the snare, secure, with no suspicion. Then and there I found my cue in man's most tragic play. Love caught me naked to his shaft, his sheath, the entrance for his ambush and surprise against the heart wide open through the eyes, the constant gate and fountain of my grief. How craven so to strike me stricken so, yet from you, fully armed, conceal his bow. So that was our first read-through. For step 2, we're going to do a line-by-line analysis and translation. So whenever I'm reading a sonnet that uses language that is not commonly heard anymore, for instance, a Shakespearean sonnet, then what I like to do is take it line by line and try to decipher the lines themselves so that I could understand the overall meaning of the poem. So, let's begin. It was the morning of that blessed day. So the poet is creating a setting. He's saying it's the morning of a blessed day. We don't know why the day was blessed yet, so we have to keep reading. Whereon the sun in pity veiled his glare. So what does it mean for the sun to veil his glare? Well, first of all, we have to understand what a veil is. What do you think of when you hear the word veil? What does a veil do? For me, I think of a bride, and how the bride covers her face with a veil before she gets to the altar. Similarly, the sun is covering its face. How does the sun do that? What is the sun's glare? And why does the sun feel pity? He might be using that word pity to establish this tone that he's going for. For the Lord's agony that unaware. Now, whenever we see the word Lord capitalized without a name right after it, we can usually assume that the poet is talking about Jesus. So, what day is he talking about that the sun might feel pity for Jesus and the agony that he endured? Well, the thing that comes to my mind is when Jesus was crucified, because that was a very painful process. So when the poet says unaware, he is referring to his own lack of knowledge that he is going to expand on in the rest of the poem. I fell a captive lady to the sway. So falling captive means you've been captured in some way. So keep that in mind because it contributes to our overall understanding of this poem. And then the footnotes from the assignment tell us that sway here means influence or control. So he fell captive to the control of your swift eyes that seemed no time to stay. So he was captured by the influence or control of when he made eye contact with her. His eyes met hers, and right away he just fell captive to her. So here it says, no time to stay, and the footnotes tell us that stay here means hold back or stop. So her eyes did nothing to hold back or stop the next part. The strokes of love. I stepped into the snare. So her eyes did nothing to hold back the strokes of love. He stepped into the snare. So notice that the poet capitalizes the word love. Here, he's referring to the god of love, Cupid, from Greek and Roman mythology, also called Eros. So, as you might know, Cupid has a bow and arrow that he uses to cause people to fall in love with each other. He hits them in the heart with his arrow, and then they fall in love with the next person they see. So he feels that he has been hunted down by Cupid and caught by Cupid, like an animal. So he fell captive because he stepped into a snare. A snare is a trap to catch animals. He feels like an animal that has been suddenly caught by the foot by a hunter. Secure with no suspicion then and there. So here, he's trying to emphasize that he didn't anticipate that he was going to suddenly be trapped by love. He felt secure and confident, like an animal happily wandering through the forest without worrying about hunters or traps or anything like that. He had no suspicion, meaning he never suspected that he would be trapped by love. I found my cue in man's most tragic play. So, in the footnotes of the assignment, we are told that man's most tragic play refers to the crucifixion of Christ, which is remembered on Good Friday. So now we know that when the poet said blessed day, he was talking about Good Friday. And the Lord's agony refers to being crucified, like we thought. He's at church for Good Friday when he sees this woman and immediately falls in love. Well, no wonder he was so surprised. He didn't expect to fall in love when he was just trying to go to church. And when you find your cue in a play, it means that something has informed you it's time for you to come on stage. But if that play is the crucifixion of Christ, it might not be a play that we want to be a part of, right? It's kind of a sad and kind of scary day. Then he says, "Love caught me naked, to his shaft, his sheath." So here, this poet is building on his earlier references to Cupid, who, as we already said, carries a bow and arrow that he uses to hit people and make them fall in love with the next person they see. But what do you think the poet means when he says he was caught naked? He's in church, so we know he's definitely wearing clothes, right? In that case, what else could it mean? Well, maybe he feels vulnerable and defenseless against Cupid's attack of this sudden attraction he feels for the woman he saw. He sees her, and immediately he feels like he's been trapped, naked, unaware, defenseless against this powerful love he immediately feels. The entrance for his ambush and surprise. So here, his use of the words ambush and surprise to build on the feeling of being hunted and trapped by love kind of contributes to that overall metaphor that we're starting to get here. When he says his sheath in the previous line, he's talking about Cupid's arrow, and it made its entrance into the poet's heart. Against the heart, wide open through the eyes. When he says wide open through the eyes, he means that his vision, his sight of this woman opened his heart suddenly to Cupid's attack. It's just a way of saying he fell in love with her immediately based on her beautiful appearance. His eyes were the gateway to his heart. And then he calls his eyes the constant gate and fountain of my grief. Since he's referring to his eyes in the previous line, we know that when he says the constant gate and fountain of my grief, he's still talking about his eyes. They're a gate for his tears, his fountain of grief. So why is he grieving? Why is he crying? Well, he tells us in the next lines. How craven so to strike me stricken so. So with this line, the poet is saying that love, Cupid, was craven. The footnotes tell us that craven means cowardly for striking him. But why? Why was Cupid a coward for striking him? Well, his last line says, yet from you, fully armed, conceal his bow. So the poet says that when it came to the woman he saw, Cupid did not strike her as well. He could have. He was fully armed. Cupid could have struck her with his arrows, but he didn't. Instead, he concealed his bow, meaning he put his bow away instead of making the woman fall in love with the narrator. So the narrator loves the woman, but she does not love him back. With the following line, he is saying it is cowardly that Cupid hit him with the arrow of love, but not the woman he admired. So now that we understand the poem better, let's think back to the idea of an extended metaphor. We know that this poem is talking about the narrator falling in love. So what comparison is he making with the experience of falling in love? What is he comparing it to? What is he trying to tell us about falling in love by making this comparison? What is Petrarch trying to say about this experience of falling in love? Well, that is everything for Petrarch Sonnet 3. I hope that this video has helped you, and if you still have some questions, please feel free to reach out. Thanks for watching!